Hey everybody, and welcome to this, my first of two videos on the KW Praktina FX, which you might notice has this crazy appendage on it. This is a clockwork mechanical motor drive that you wind up to advance the film. I am not going to take this off of the camera. This originally came with the 2A, and I swapped it onto this camera, and getting the gearing in this to align properly took me 45 minutes. It's a beautiful piece of equipment and it works really well, but it is so precise that you have to be incredibly accurate with how all of the gearing lines up with this, or it will just jam up your camera, which is what happened when I initially put it on this FX, and I thought I had ruined the FX and the Advance here. Fortunately, did not. But it is touchy and difficult, and I'm not doing it again. So this is an interchangeable lens SLR, has no built-in light meter, although there were some prisms that had light meters in them. It has shutter speeds of 1 second to 1/1000th, as well as bulb. The viewfinder magnification on this is based on the prism, but I couldn't find any specs for that. It has a plain matte focusing screen, and the flash sync on this camera is 1/20th of a second. Blistering, well, 1/25th on this camera. My notes say 1/50th, but the book that I was reading last night on these said 1/25th. So what that means is that's simply the fastest shutter speed you can use and have a flash sync with a modern flash. This camera would have been marketed for the advanced and probably professional users, given some of the accessories like the motor drive here. There was a battery-powered motor drive, a 250 frame film back you could put on it. Some of those accessories and the interchangeable prisms and focusing screens would have been geared towards professionals. On release, this was the single most advanced camera in the world when it hit the market by meaningful amounts. And it remained more advanced than the vast majority of production cameras until the mid-60s. That's 10 years after it came out. It has a magnificent build quality and an absolutely beautiful supporting system. It was made by KW, which stands for Camera Work Niedersedlitz, in Dresden, East Germany from 1953 to 1958. It was preceded by nothing. There were some prototype Praktinas. It was concurrent with various Praktica models plus the Pentona, and it was followed by the Praktina 2A. So if you have your Praktina FX, we're going to go through the features and functions on this camera and talk about what they are. In the second video, we'll talk about how to use them and what they do. Starting on the top, though technically the front, we have the strap lugs right here, which is what you connect your camera strap to. This dial here is a film type memo dial. It controls nothing on the camera, it's just to remind you. This T color means tungsten balanced color film. K color means your outdoor balanced film. And then these are black and white ISOs, or DINs actually, I take it back. These are DIN numbers, not ISO numbers. So whatever your film DIN is, that's what you're gonna set it to here, unless you're using daylight, which is Kelvin, or tungsten balanced color film. Film rewind knob here, prism, KW logo, shutter speed dial here, frame count dial above it, and then shutter advance here. And your shutter release button is on the front, covered by the winder. On the front, we have the shutter release, obviously. We have down here the prism lock and unlock button. We have the breech mount for the lens. There we go. We have the automatic aperture connection there. We have the flash PC ports, which are X is on top and F bulbs are on the bottom. If you're using this to take flash photos, you're going to use the X flash sync, which is what modern flashes are. The difference between these is timing, and if you plug your modern flash into the F socket, it will not time correctly and your flash will not sync correctly with your shutter speeds. Here we have a quick view viewfinder window. On the side, we have the film back release right here, which is what we'll use to get into the camera in just a minute. On the film back itself, we have the viewfinder window, the focusing prism, the focusing viewfinder window right here. Now the bottom of this camera is exactly the same as on the 2A, which is this right here. And we have the film rewind button, tripod socket, and then the mechanical connection for the motor drive right here. On the inside of the camera, if you're opening the film back outside, just remember to grab it because it comes off. We have the film cassette area where you will put your film to load it, which we'll see in the second video. Film guide rails, and what they do is the film pressure plate here sandwiches up against the film with the guide rails to keep the film flat as it's moving through the camera. And that also helps ensure that the light focuses properly on the film when the images are taken. Film tension sprocket, which keeps tension on the film so that it moves through the camera properly and isn't pulled back into the film cassette by the spring memory that's built up in the film from being stored, wound up like this for however many months or years. Film take-up spool, film pressure plate we covered. And this little spring here keeps the film cassette properly aligned so that the film comes off of it properly. I am terrible about putting these camera backs on for these models of camera. There we go, that did it. Okay, so some notes about this camera. The Praktina was the first camera with a breech lock lens system, interchangeable prisms, interchangeable focusing screens, removable film backs for use with the 400 frame. I misspoke earlier when I said 250 film back, and also the first that was designed for use with a motor drive. In short, this was the first advanced, recognizably modern system SLR, and most other makers couldn't copy what goes into this camera here for another 20 years when you take the whole package as a bundle. So it wasn't really until the 70s that this camera had any real competition for anything that was equivalently advanced to it. For collectors, the Praktina cameras are a great challenge, and there are 4 discrete versions of this, the FX, and 2 different versions of this, the 2A. So if you were to set out to collect all of the Praktinas, there are 6 different discrete versions based on manufacturing variances of these 2 cameras. In the video description, there is a link to Praktina.com, and that provides all of the details about what versions of these cameras exist. For those curious, my specific FX is an SA3 version 1. Some things not to do with your Praktina FX. Don't store the camera with the shutter ready to fire. Always trip it because these are mechanical components in here. If you have the motor drive on, you want to trip this until all of the tension is taken out of the motor drive springs as well. Because these are mechanical components, if you store them under tension, the springs in the mechanical components will develop a memory of being under tension, and they will get weaker over time and they can break or they can just not function properly. Don't touch the shutter. That's a really good way to brick your camera. Don't touch the mirror because your finger oils can desilver it, which will complicate your ability to focus. Don't leave your camera and lenses in your car because, one, they're collector's cameras. They do fetch enough money that they would be interesting to someone who steals cameras. But more importantly, heat will cause the oils in them to get thin and get to places they shouldn't, like the lens aperture. Or extreme cold will cause the oils to break down and get gummy, which will affect your camera's ability to work properly. Don't store your cameras and lenses in a plastic bag or box unless you have a rechargeable desiccant pack that you keep recharged, because moisture will permeate the plastic, and that will cause fungus to grow on your lenses and also to cause mildew to grow in the leather. Don't let this get wet. It's not weather sealed, and water inside of it can cause it to rust. And just remember, your Praktina FX is a precision tool and should be handled with care and respect. And as long as you take care of your camera will take care of you.